Hi guys, this is Dr. Moyer providing a voiceover for the Disabilities and Disadvantage PowerPoint. What we need to know or understand about disabilities is that quite a few Americans are affected by having some sort of disability that affects their ability to either see, hear, walk, lift, and or learn. So this encompasses a number of different types of disabilities. It can include blindness, deafness, the inability to walk, learning disabilities, mental disabilities or developmental disabilities. And it can be any type of disability. However, you have to remember that not all disabilities are visible. And so you have to be careful not to assume that you're always going to be able to tell if somebody has a disability. A good example of this is learning disabilities. Sometimes in class, I find my students talking about those that have disabilities in a less than flattering way, and I have to remind the class that you don't know necessarily whether or not people sitting beside you have a disability. Not all of them are visible, and you can't always tell. A good case in point was a good friend of mine in graduate school. Turned out that she was deaf. I didn't even know because she had gone deaf gradually and didn't talk in a different way. And she wore hearing aids that were very, not very detectable is the word I'm looking for. And not that I said anything bad, but none of us were aware of why she sat in front of the class and had to watch you intently if she was having a conversation with you because she was reading your lips. So, as I always say, assume diversity because you just never know. You can't always tell, and it's better just to assume that somebody around you does have a disability so that you'll talk in a way that is not unflattering. Sorry. An important part of talking about individuals with disability is to always put the person first. Don't talk about people last. So you don't want to say a handicapped person or a disabled person. You instead want to put the individual first. And so some examples that I've put up on the PowerPoint: individuals with disabilities, a person with a developmental disability, my friend has a physical disability, a family with a child that has a disability, families with a child or children with disabilities. I realize that this doesn't come naturally to most of us, and it may be a challenge to try to talk this way. However, it is very important as a professional that you do use people first language because people listen to you and they model what you do. They expect you to be educated because you'll have a degree in FCS. And so you have to model the way that professionals should speak. If you make a mistake, it's not a big deal as long as you correct yourself, learn from your mistake, and try to make fewer of them as time goes on. I sometimes make a mistake. It's taken me a long time, and I've been practicing for 9 years about how to talk like this. So just make an effort. If you make an effort, people can tell, and they know you're trying. Women are a special group when it comes to disabilities because they're more affected by the conditions that can cause a disability. So they're more likely to have things like heart conditions, back conditions, arthritis, fibromyalgia, things that can result in having some sort of disability that interferes with daily life. And over half of women over the age of 65 have some kind of documented disability. So women are more profoundly affected. When it comes to poverty, this is a bidirectional relationship between disability and poverty. So disability can cause poverty, and poverty can cause disability. That's what we mean when we say bidirectional. Chronic poverty is associated with the development and perpetuation of disability. So what this basically means is that people that are living in poverty have a greater likelihood of developing some type of disability than those that live above the poverty threshold. And so there's a number of reasons for this. The conditions within the environment, the effects of chronic stress over time, not having access to quality health care, not having access to preventative health measures. Basically, the living conditions that we've been talking about so far increase the likelihood of somebody developing a disability. And that's unfortunate. It has a lot to do also with children at that prime developmental age. Up till age 5, they're more likely and more affected by their surroundings, their environment, toxins in the environment, and it affects them more than it affects adults. So this is particularly true when it comes to children. But how can having a disability lead to poverty? Well, unfortunately, there's not a lot of financial benefit to having a disability. Many people do believe that Americans try to claim that they have a disability so that they can collect money, much like welfare. However, this is not a lot of money. It's one of the misconceptions about SSI, or stands for Supplemental Security Income, and it is not true. Also, having a disability can affect one's ability to work or maintain employment at or in a position that provides good pay with good benefits. And there is a lot of medical costs associated with having a disability depending on the type. And many people have to come up with some of these accommodations or treatments themselves. And so it can very easily lead to living in poverty. It's very expensive to have a disability, particularly one that disrupts mobility. So what kind of public policies exist for those with disabilities? There's actually a lot. I chose to hone in on 2 because I think it's important for you guys to be aware of them. There's the Americans with Disability Act, or the ADA, and then there's Supplemental Security Income, which I mentioned in the previous slide, or SSI. So the Americans with Disabilities Act, there's a lot of misconceptions about this policy, just like with any other policy. In a nutshell, it prohibits discrimination in recruitment, hiring, promotions, training, pay, social activities, and other privileges of employment for any employer that has at least 15 employees. And so businesses or companies that have less than 15 employees are exempt from having to make certain accommodations in the workplace. It's also, the ADA policy restricts questions that can be asked about an applicant's disability before a job offer is made. Remember, not all disabilities are visible, so an employer can't always tell just by looking at somebody. The Act also requires that employers have to make reasonable accommodation to the known physical or mental limitations of otherwise qualified individuals with disabilities unless it results in undue hardship. So what this means is that employers have to make accommodations if it is considered reasonable. And many accommodations are very reasonable. They may just consist of giving an employee extra break time or a longer lunch break. May also be that they need a larger workspace or a special chair to sit at their desk. They may also need technology accommodations, which can get a little more expensive, but depending on how many people the company employs and how much of a profit they make, it's not going, if it's an accommodation that is going to make the company go under, then obviously that would not be considered reasonable. But like I said, many accommodations are reasonable. It may even just be a close parking space. It can also be lots of short breaks throughout the day. I can't stress enough that a lot of these accommodations are not expensive and are easily made. SSI, or Supplemental Security Income, is another policy that's mandated by the federal government to provide income for individuals that qualify. It's designed to help the aging, the blind, any individuals with a disability. I took this language directly from Social Security Online, and it did say disabled people, by the way. So not everyone's caught up to the people first language. Anyways, back to what I'm saying. Those who have little or no income, it provides cash for basic human needs like food, clothing, and shelter. On average, the federal benefit is $698 for an individual. Some states provide more than that. So we're not talking about a lot of money. It's not enough to just have that to just live on. And so when people do qualify for SSI, or what they refer to as disability, it's not a great deal of money. It does help, though, if there is something coming in to help a family when they have one of the family members with a disability, or if somebody's living on their own. I've given a link where you can find more information about the SSI policy. It is something that you could use for the policy assignment, for example, if you wanted to find a movie that exemplified some type of disability. The previous slide. So what do? Well, if you treat everyone you meet with respect and courtesy, part of that is the assumed diversity philosophy I promote, then you'll be fine. Provide assistance if appropriate without condescension. So you might say, can I give you a hand with that? And if the individual says no, they're fine. That's fine. You just walk away. Sometimes assistance is needed and people appreciate somebody asking. But don't assume that they need assistance with everything. If you see somebody struggling, say, to get something off the top shelf, they can't reach it, you may offer to get it for them. It's a good example. Don't use facilities that are designed for individuals with disabilities if you don't have a disability. Don't take the handicap parking space. Don't use the handicap bathroom facility. Don't use those facilities so that they are available for individuals that have disabilities. You don't want to be in a situation where you have taken something that was supposed to be provided for an individual with disability. It's embarrassing, it's rude, and it's inappropriate. And as long as you look at people with disabilities as people first, so we use the people first language, you won't get into trouble. And it may be uncomfortable at times. You may not have experience interacting with individuals with disabilities, but I find that the more you interact, the more experience you get, the more comfortable you become. So practice makes perfect. And that is